Welcome to Tech Startup Stories, hosted by Natalie Binns. This is the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the B2B startup world.
Hi, I'm Natalie Binns, and I'm the host of Tech Startup Stories. This podcast is really designed to share the unique and challenging journeys of all the people that are building small startups to scale-ups in the tech space. My background, initially I was in sales and then I moved into marketing, and I've been lucky enough to work with some amazing tech companies. But my passion is really startups. And that led me back to helping tech startups set up their marketing and go-to-market functions where the budgets are tight and the resources are few and far between. So let's get into this week's podcast.
Welcome. Hi, Tom, to everyone listening. This week, I'm super excited. I've got Tom Rudnai on the podcast, and he is joining us. He's the CEO and founder of a company called Demand Genius, based in the UK, but a global company. And they specialize in a topic that is quite literally the bane of most marketers' lives. It's all about attribution and the content revenue side of attribution, specifically for B2B marketers, which, as most of you know, that's my background. So I've felt those pains, and I'm super excited to have you on today, Tom. So tell me, how on earth did you get into this? What's been your journey, your kind of career journey before starting the company?
Hey, nice to be here. To kind of take you way back, so I've always wanted to start a business. That's always been my goal. I actually tried to initially out of university. So first business I tried to start was a kind of gambling app. So very different to this. Not actually gambling, but giving people analytics on how their own gambling was going. So like even going back to when I was 21, that was what I wanted to do. Didn't go great, and I realized like there was a lot of stuff that I hadn't got right in how I tried to do that. So that's what kind of led me into the world of B2B and B2B sales, different project management jobs and stuff like that as well. But always knowing that I wanted to get back to starting something for myself. I guess I like the thrill ride of it. In terms of how we ended up at content attribution, I mean, I've worked for the last 4 years in the publishing space. So in SaaS, but selling into publishers. And that's where myself and my co-founder both kind of came up with the idea to apply a lot of the techniques that they use to drive commercial outcomes out of content to our own world, because we're trying to do the same thing, right? And a publisher is trying to sell a subscription from its digital content. As a B2B marketer, you're trying to do any number of things depending on where in the funnel it is, potentially drive a lead or help actually drive someone through the funnel and eventually close them depending on the kind of sales model. But the core job is the same. How do we take someone from content to an outcome? And that's what we're trying to do here.
So you've basically come full circle because you took a gamble in setting up your own business in an area that has been just quite difficult for people to manage. What do you think has been the turning point of how that problem has kind of grown to the point of needing a technology like yourselves?
The problem of attribution, do you mean? Or...
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's become a lot harder in recent years because I think the role of marketing has changed a little bit for most B2B. So like the traditional role of marketing within a B2B context is very much top of funnel, right? And it comes from how we've organized ourselves as teams and the whole kind of go-to-market model that we've adopted, which is generally speaking pretty sales-led. So you have marketing whose job is to sit at the top of the funnel, drive engagement, drive leads, but those leads are then handed over to a sales rep who's going to kind of take them through who's going to harass them via cold calling endlessly and try and close the lead. That's all changing, I think, a little bit, right? And marketing now has a much more full funnel role, which means that the job of attribution and understanding not just how much overall revenue are different pieces of content performing, but how are they impacting all the little micro conversions that exist within the sales process. That now becomes a lot more important because what we're optimizing for as a marketing team, I think, is now different, right? The days of siloed individual organizations where you have marketing sitting here and sales sitting here and typically bashing heads against each other a little bit. I think it's something everyone is trying to move on from. But in order to move on from it, you have to all be able to work towards the same goals, right? As long as your goals are siloed, marketing driving for MQLs or leads, and sales driving to close one revenue, you're always going to get that finger pointing that exists, right? You've got that classic thing in organizations where everyone's hitting their target, but we're still missing our revenue target. What we want to help people do is get everyone working towards a North Star of revenue and make all of those more granular metrics leading indicators that are strategically and tactically useful, but shouldn't be anyone's North Star.
So how do you think that's going to stop the age-old battle of when numbers are not hit, sales blaming marketing, marketing blaming sales, blaming whoever else, this kind of blame game that the companies often get into?
I think it creates a shared responsibility for that metric, right? So rather than having this situation where you've got all these leading indicators that allow everyone to say, my team is doing a fantastic job, when you all roll up into the same number at the end of the day, you create a sense of shared responsibility. But I think it's also, at the end of the day, that is always going to be a cultural problem, right? So you can help to fix that with the ability to set targets in the right place and kind of point people in the right direction. But that's always something that will be on leadership, right? Is to make sure that they don't start doing that. But I think if you create a more tangible link from everyone's work through to revenue, then you allow them to create a much more accurate representation of whether they're truly impacting that, and prevent this situation where people are optimizing for specific outcomes that aren't necessarily conducive to the whole, right? You think of a piece of content, it's very easy to go and produce. Actually, the best example I can think of in my world is LinkedIn, right? If I want to go and produce a LinkedIn post tomorrow that gets 100 likes, I'd feel pretty confident that I can do it. I'm going to do something about SDRing, and all the SDRs are going to like my LinkedIn post. But it's not who I want to speak to. So in a kind of siloed, isolated world where you're saying, Tom, your job as owner of the founder brand is to go and write LinkedIn posts that drive engagement, that would be the post to write. But it's not actually going to do anything for us. It's going to give me a wonderful hit of dopamine as I watch all the likes pour in. But it's not actually leading to our collective goals as a business. And that's where I think being able to draw that line more clearly to show Tom in this instance that, hey, that LinkedIn post, yes, okay, it made you feel great, but it didn't actually help move us forward. I think that makes a big impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I think marketing is just constantly changing. So the world of sales have as well. And so when it comes to building your own business, obviously you've got the experience on the commercial side of things and understanding the problems that your tech is kind of built around, but you're not the techie yourself. And I know you've got a co-founder. Talk me through the kind of early journey that you had from like your first initial thoughts to how you found your kind of co-founder, and where you kind of got together, and how you kind of got to the stage you're at now.
Yeah, I mean, you know my co-founder James, right? I'm incredibly lucky to have him. He's the kind of technical wizard that does all the clever things that we do. So I was very lucky that we'd worked together for the last 4.5 years as part of a previous startup that we were both kind of relatively early employees at, went through to exit. So that's a really nice way to start a business, because you have someone that you can trust first and foremost. You know exactly how they operate, and we've been working super closely together, right? He was kind of head of solutions consulting, I was the enterprise sales guy. So we were used to working under quite a lot of pressure together, and I knew that we saw our own market in a similar way, because we were starting to look at content marketing in our own context now as a B2B, but we both brought that publishing background. It was nice. I'd spoken to various people about kind of what I wanted to do and things like that. And when I spoke to James about it, it just really clicked, and he completely saw the vision. And I think particularly if you're a commercial founder and you want someone that you're going to hand the product vision and the technology vision over to a little bit, but they have to share it. They have to genuinely get that, and they have to view it with a similar lens to you, I think, because otherwise they're going to start. You're asking for friction, I think, further down the road otherwise, because you're going to have a very different eye of where it needs to go. So I think, yeah, the fact that we'd worked together before was priceless. But I think the thing I'd say to anyone who's kind of doesn't have that luxury of having someone that they already know who is a good fit for them to start a business with, don't rush it and don't underestimate the importance of like all the soft things between two founders, because you're going to have times when shit hits the fan and you're under quite a lot of pressure when one of you messes something up, right? Normally me.
I'll tell James you said that.
Yeah, no, don't worry, he'll tell me every day. But we can laugh with each other about it, and he can even take the piss out of me a little bit for it, and then we move on, right? Rather than it kind of growing into something where you feel let down. Like, yeah, I would say don't underestimate that. So yeah, I'm kind of very long-winded answer to your question, but that in terms of finding a co-founder, that's been the biggest thing that I think has helped me get us get to what the place that we are now, and it's kind of been my rock. From a product perspective, I mean, I'd say it was a much more deliberate and kind of there was a little bit more thought that went into that process. So kind of going through lots of different rounds of Figma prototypes. And when you say coding it and building it initially, the first thing you do when you start a business is not write any code. And that was where, yeah, I mean, we went through a process. I think we had 4 different Figma prototypes that we built, each one getting ripped apart before we kind of eventually decided to write some code. I think there's always a tough line as to when you make that jump, right? Like there's the YC model, which is keep doing interviews, don't write a line of code until you've almost got people queuing up to buy it. The reality for most founders is that you have a runway and it doesn't necessarily afford you a year of prototyping before you actually produce anything you can sell. So I think you always have to know for you the balance that you can tread. But I think we did quite a good job of that in terms of validating that there was a need, but also at a point being like, okay, let's build something.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you guys have known each other a while. You're very different in personalities and backgrounds, but you work really well together. But have there ever been any moments where you've actually wanted to kill each other, or like you've had some heated debates, perhaps?
I mean, generally we disagree well. I think because we share a pretty similar sense of humor, we can disagree, and it leads us to take the piss out of each other and not get angry at each other. Honestly, and I know this is probably surprising, no, we disagree every day.
Yeah.
About something, but I think we're pretty good at talking through it, agreeing he's right, and moving on.
So what we're saying is James is the boss.
James is 100% in charge. He's the clever one. Everything good comes.
Brilliant. Okay, note to self: get James on the next podcast.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, you've got the wrong founder. I'm sorry to
So I think what most people struggle with when they're kind of getting going, firstly, it's taking the leap. Like that must be quite scary for somebody like yourself, like James, who have got very good jobs, very, stellar careers, good salaries. Let's be honest, in B2B tech, salaries mainly why so many people do it.
I missed that.
And then exactly. And then you take this leap to poverty, essentially, which a lot of founders do. So kind of what was your preparation to do that? And at what point were you kind of saying, I'm going to give this a go? And, did you have a plan B, or were you just, this is it?
Not really a plan B. I think there's a line to tread again between being bold and betting on yourself and being reckless and kind of giving yourself 3-6 months, because actually you just make it so hard. And also one thing I think is an easy trap to fall into is you become almost too desperate when you're that close to the line. And certainly that was one thing I found at one point when it was getting a bit more hairy and I was trying to work out what to do. I find you're trying to monetize every conversation really short term, and that's not a good place to be either. So I mean, you have to do the maths and make sure that you have an amount of runway that gives you enough time to do what you want to do, but also, I mean, be willing to take the bet, right? I think it's very easy to get. So yeah, we were in a job that paid pretty nicely, and for me, it was sales. Well, both commission based, really, but particularly for me, there's always one more deal. There's always, but if I just wait 2 months, then I'm going to get that. And it's so easy to like blink and you've missed 5 years. And I've spoken to people who are in exactly that situation. Like, I wish I'd had the courage to do it a bit earlier, and sure, I wouldn't, my car would be a bit different right now or something like that. Well, actually, right now it wouldn't have been, but it would have been 3 years back. So you just have to think about what's important to you, right? And that was always the thing for me. I index hugely in my life on enjoying the journey and on doing something that I'm passionate about. I find that difficult. If I'm not passionate about what I'm doing, I genuinely I just don't get out of bed. It's not, it doesn't agree with me. So I think at a point you have to think be led by what's going to make you happier, because if you're happy, you're going to wake up every day and do cool shit. If you're not happy, you're generally going to kind of plod through, and it's going to bleed into other areas of your life as well. Like you would go when earning a lot of money, you can go on great holidays, but you're not really that fulfilled while you're there, and you're not really excited. Then when you get back with what you're going to do, it all just kind of blurs together. Whereas when you're be led by what's going to fulfill you. Would be my advice.
I think that's a really, really interesting point. And I think there's a lot of people that haven't figured out what their purpose is, and what really makes them happy. And now we do talk a lot about mental health and balance, and, you know, it's kind of gone from the having it all to having what you want and what you need out of life. What do you think has been the most fulfilling part of your journey so far?
Oh, that's a good, difficult question. It's not been long enough, and I've not had a chance really to look back and reflect on that. The most fulfilling part, I mean, it's the things that you do every day, right? The little interactions. So I think for me, it's the process of what I really enjoy is having a lot more creativity in my day as an enterprise sales rep. It's not the most creative role. Generally, there are elements where it is, but generally, it's really about procedure and process, particularly when you're working in the enterprise. I think a little bit less so actually mid-market, because people want your support a little bit and they want your help and your advice. In enterprise, they don't. They know what they want to do. This is our roadmap. How can your technology help us do that? And it becomes a lot of project management, structural kind of role, and that's not me. So what I really enjoy about as a founder is that skill set is obviously immensely helpful, but there's an opportunity also to do something a bit more creative, to think outside the box. I like the fact that we've had a chance to build something, and you can kind of look back at that. I think the other thing for me is I always love like the huge wins, the feeling when you come off a call and you just close your first customer or won your first customer, or you've just seen the product, or kind of you've had a fundraising call that goes really well, something like that. That feeling is something like that. I love that. But that's the adrenaline junkie in me. And actually, it's quite a dangerous because for every one of those ups, there's also a down. And like that side of being a founder as well. It's an absolute, like, emotionally, it's a roller coaster. So you've got to be prepared to ride that a little bit, and I think you've got to enjoy that. You've got to be a little bit sick.
So with your experience and your kind of addiction to the sale, if I put it that way, how do you think you're going to cope when you've got to the point where you've got to become the CEO and take off one of those hats, particularly on the sales side, and hand that over to a sales leader, a sales team, a sales individual? How are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, probably awfully, but
I love your honesty. I love it. So anyone that's going to work for Tom in the future is going to be a nightmare to work for.
Yeah, God, no one's listening. I think that side of things I'll be okay with. One thing I'm very conscious of, and I'm quite kind of accentuated in a lot of this as well. Like I have ADHD, things like that. So I ride the roller coaster and the ups and downs very aggressively. It's just a part of who I am naturally, and then I'm doing something which really leans into that. But so I am very conscious, and it's something I've talked to therapists for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's something I am conscious of. There is, how do I make sure that when I'm riding that up and down, which I quite enjoy doing, I'm not letting that seep into the team. And for the moment, it's quite good, because that up and down, it leads to a lot of activity. It leads you to kind of just throw yourself all in to riding that roller coaster. And I think it's good when you're in, controversial phrase these days, but founder mode. When you're in that very early scrappy stage, but then the role of a CEO shifts a little bit, kind of probably, and we're not there yet, but when you need to be the rock a little bit more, and you can't be that such an up and down character. So it's something I worry about, is how that, is how I'll I don't want my own up and downs to lead to us having up and downs as a business and to make this a worse place or a difficult place for anyone to work, because most people don't thrive in that kind of environment, right? So I think for now the answer is always like, you just need to be conscious of these things and be aware of it. Again, having people around you who are your kind of rock and are a little bit more even is always good. And building a culture where people feel they can be authentic, right? And I think that always starts with you. So I don't necessarily need to temper my own emotions and things like that, but I do need to make sure I'm not allowing it to come out in a negative way where I'm kind of imposing them onto others. So let people see. I think it's important people see the downs as well, right? See that I'm not always finding it easy, or that, you have these days where just every call seems to go badly, and at the end you feel beaten, and it's kind of a slope because your confidence is knocked in each one and things like that. But I hope that we end up as a kind of culture where people can see that in me and see that I struggle with that kind of stuff, but where it doesn't leak into their own sense of enjoyment in their day, and it's never something which is put onto them.
I think there's a lot to be said for your approach to this. And firstly, I appreciate you being so open about the whole concept of neurodiversity within your organization and how you will address that in the future. I think diversity, neurodiversity, these things were not talked about, particularly by founders, probably even 5 years ago. It was seen as any kind of negative connotation, any difference could be seen as a challenge in running a business or being a founder. And I hope this perception has changed, and people are now starting to see actually the value in having that neurodiversity and different experiences and diversity in teams and leadership. What do you think is your vision for hiring great talent, your kind of view on how you would like to organically grow the business?
From what sense, I suppose, like in terms of could you expand on the question a little bit more?
Yeah, so I guess, whether you're thinking about being a remote first company and hiring just UK initially and then maybe expanding in the future, or whether you see yourselves as a global organization now and you want to look to hire people from different backgrounds or different time zones or wherever they are, or whether you're considering actually we want the traditional model of everybody coming to an office fairly regularly, and the collaboration that way. What's your kind of view on how you see building the team, and what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I think I go back and forth. I think my answer to this is a little bit different actually to what it would have been a year ago or so. I think if a year ago, if you'd asked me, I'd have said I don't really give a crap where anyone is, what office they're in, things like that. I think Zoom works great. I'm starting to come around to, I would like there to be particularly during the next 18, 24 months, I would like us to hire predominantly in the UK and kind of around London, enough that we can meet in London once a week, let's say, and kind of I think there is a little bit of the startup magic and the fun of it as well that is lost if you don't have that. I think it can be a lonely journey, the kind of early entrepreneurial journey. So I think, creating space for that to happen, I think is important. And I think it's important to creativity and to also building closer relationships while you want that. I don't want to look back and feel like I missed that part where it's kind of magical and you got some really cool, smart people in a room doing cool shit. That said, I mean, I'm well aware we first and foremost, I want great people here, great people who want to do great work, that we can't compete with Monzo and with Google on salaries. But we can absolutely compete on flexibility. So I think it will always, for me, I think, be in the short term, when these are mostly my decisions, it will be a case by case thing with a slight kind of tick in a box if you're able to get to London at least once a week, certainly once a month. But that casts a pretty wide net if you're talking once a month. Longer term, then I think it's up to it ceases to be my decision at that point. It's kind of you hire people in each area to do a job, and I think it's up to them how they want to run their team, and I don't think that necessarily needs to be consistent across the whole company. One thing I am quite big on is I feel like there was that trend a while ago, and I think it's fading a little bit, of like, we're a family. I'm a big We're not a family. You have your family. I think we're a family is a wonderful way to stop everyone seeing their families. We're not going to be that. It's not a kind of cult-like organization and I think that always tends to be a great way to pull people into the office. I hope that we're going to be a group of people who really enjoy each other's company, who get on well, and who feel really rewarded by what we do every day. But we're not a family. You have your own family. Come in, do your work, be proud of it, and then hopefully carve out time to spend lots of time with your actual family.
And that's what I think so many people resonate with now. And the whole "we're a family" term, just, I think it's been done to a death, and it's kind of created such a negative environment where you're letting the family down if you actually want to spend time with your own family. And yeah, you're a team and everybody plays a part. And so, having that mindset that, we're not on this earth just to do great things from a professional capacity, although that's what drives a lot of people. But, when all's said and done, no one is going to be wishing they worked more hours when they're on their deathbed, are they?
No, exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. And also that the two things aren't conflicting, right? Like, I don't think, generally speaking, if you've got a difficult problem to solve, like sitting at your desk and staring at it is not the way. I'm conscious. I'm an awful example of this. I'm working at the weekends. But it's also it's my baby, right? I absolutely don't expect anyone else to be as interested in what we're doing as I am. So it's I'll always have to temper that. And if you ask James what does cause arguments, it's probably sometimes the texts at weird times and weird on days when we're not meant to be working, like Christmas Day, when I'm thinking about this. But I don't expect a reply. He can ignore it.
Well, this is it, and it's about creating that culture in your organization where I work weird hours because my brain is always thinking about what we're doing, but there is no way I want a response from you when it's inappropriate for you. You respond when you're ready, when you're back at your desk, whatever that may be. I think, having that sense of urgency of, and I've seen it where, somebody gets an email and they think, oh, I need to show that I'm working really hard, so I'm going to reply at 10 o'clock at night. When actually that email could have been sent in the morning, and nobody's had any problems in between that time. So I like that culture and I like that approach. So because of where you're at in terms of your own stage in life, I think that definitely lends itself well to your passions and kind of working full time and weekends and evenings. And, I think when you are building a business, it is your baby, and it is something that doesn't feel like work because it's fun to you, because it's your thing and it's your idea. And obviously, when you have an employee, they're paid to do a job, and therefore they're never going to have the same kind of level of excitement for what you're doing. But how do you envisage helping people feel that they're part of something, that it's not just a job for them? And although we're not expecting them to work silly hours or lose the balance, but that they're creating value and doing something worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. Well, there's a few parts, right? How do you make them feel like it's kind of like they're a part of it? I mean, the simplest answer is equity, right? You can do all of the. It's very easy as a founder to sit there and talk.
Show me the money.
This is everyone's like, no, give them a stake and make sure that it incentivizes them and makes them feel like they're gonna share in the rewards. There's also a little bit then of they're sharing in the risk, and you have to recognize that. Again, we can't reward you as well as Monzo do, as well as Google do, but long term we can, and we want to. So that's the simple answer: is put your money where your mouth is if you want to do that, and if you don't, that's fine too. Just be honest about it. In terms of like the day to day, I think it's people want autonomy, they want freedom, and they want to feel like they can fuck up without it coming back to bite them. And so I think if you give people that, then they'll kind of create their own conditions and they'll create their own little way of going at the role, which really appeals to how they want to spend their days. I think it's not, I think it's quite easy in the early stages because there's so many different things we can do, right? If I'm hiring a marketer, right, let's say, and I decide that I think what we really need is a demand gen marketer. They're going to come in, they're going to do demand gen type stuff, but there's so many things right now that can help us grow. The issue is not, if they have interest outside of that and it's going to work, then go try it. And if it starts to work, keep doing it, and we'll hire a demand gen marketer next. It's really easy at this point. I think it becomes a lot harder once you're a bit bigger, because then you do need people to perform the role that they were brought in to do a little bit more. And you can provide kind of horizontal and upwards mobility, but it always is going to be a slower process. And at that point, I don't really have the answer, because then it's removed from you as well, because then it becomes on the frontline manager. But it's always quite simple. If people feel heard, they feel valued, then they're going to enjoy what they're doing each day. I'm always conscious, because the other thing is it's very easy to try and accentuate a very high-minded goal behind what you're doing. We don't have that. At the end of the day, we help people attribute and forecast revenue more accurately, right? We're not saving the world here.
You're saving marketers.
We're saving marketers, and I think you can find a really nice. I take a lot of joy in that, right? That's important to me, and I find it really interesting. But that isn't going to be for everyone, and I don't want to dress it up as something that it's not. You have to. I think you just have to get excited by that, and I think some people do, some people don't, and that's fine. That's why interview processes always have to be such a two-way street, right? And I think creating a lot of time, the one thing I can do, particularly at this stage, because I need that, is create a lot of time and space within that process for them to talk and for us to have this conversation directly.
Brilliant. So what's next for Demand Genius? What do you see happening in the next 12 months to 18 months?
Next 12 to 18 months, hopefully a whole lot more customers starting to use Demand Genius. We're kind of at the stage now, we're on market. We know that we can get customers going pretty quickly and show them exactly how much revenue they're getting out of content and help them get more. So I think we're kind of ready to start investing a little bit more in scaling that. From a functionality point of view and where we see the product going, there's two things that we really want to do. One is make it really, really easy to use us. So at the moment, we can get you set up over the course of a 30, 50-minute call. We want that to be easy. You can do it on your own if you can do it on your own if you want to. We're here to help only if needed. The other element for us is the cool thing about content is it feeds every element of the marketing machine. So at the moment, we tell you what content's working in every stage of a sales process and how you can fill all the gaps in that to get more to get more out of that. The next thing is feeding that into all those distribution channels. So you've got sales reps that need to use content to engage people who typically these days don't naturally want to engage with sales reps quite as regularly. So you need to have that to allow them to stay front of mind. You've got paid kind of performance marketing who are using content as the foundation of everything they do. You've got events, which is always kind of pivoted around a particular piece of content. What we want to do is understand how we can put our insight that right now is for the content marketing team into the workflows of those people so that we can start driving a more tangible ROI increase across all of the different elements of the marketing machine.
So lots more customers. What else?
Lots more customers, lots more features.
Lots more features, lots more late nights.
Hopefully not too many more late or at least late. I'm not too bad with late nights. I'm not so good with early mornings. So
Okay. So you're an early riser, but you get to bed early.
No, opposite. I'm these days I'm more of a night owl. There's one thing that's changed actually, and one of the nice things about working for yourself is that you can build your schedule much more around your own natural body clock rather than around when the world says you need to be at work. So I can stay up really I sound like a child. I can stay up as late as I want now.
I can eat what I want. If I want to order pizza, I will.
Exactly. I'm a grown up. No, but you can build your habits around you more, rather than having to build it around, I have to be at my desk at this time and I have to really be online between these hours. You're a lot more flexible. So now I'm much more of a night owl.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been brilliant to have you on today, Tom. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thanks for sharing everything that you've shared and being so open.
No worries. Nice to talk to you. Nice to catch up.
That's it for this episode of Tech Startup Stories. Have a story you'd like us to share or a topic you'd want to cover? Reach out and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.